I've been obsessed with writing and poetry ever since I was a kid. The first story that I put out into the world was called Nixie Moxie, and I was 15 when I started writing it. I put it out on Wattpad when it was free and you could just read stuff. And I finished it when I was 17 on my senior year of high school. And it was the most popular story I had ever written, had ever received feedback on, and people loved it. But it blew my mind, even to this day, because it was the most unpolished story I had ever written. It was not planned. It just was a random thought in my head one day. I had like 6 locations that did not correlate to each other. It took place in like a giant circle. There wasn't even a map. All that I had were the characters that I thought about and what I wanted to happen to them. And without having anything fully fleshed out, it became my most popular story to date. Even though I'm writing a story now that is polished and planned that I'm putting together to have come out in the next few years, even now, when I tell avid writers about it and aspiring writers and bookworms and people who want to write and make their own books and stories, the number one question that I get asked is, how do you write? And it blew my mind for a little bit. I was like, what do you mean? How do I write? But how do you just write? And I hadn't realized how many people struggled with the ability to just do that. The ability to just pick up a pen, a pencil, grab a notebook, an iPad, a keyboard, and just start writing. Because I never really struggled with that. Whenever I would want to write, whenever I would have a story in mind or an idea or a book or anything that I wanted to write, I would just be able to do it, you know? Even if it was ugly, even if it wasn't fully fleshed out, even if it wasn't thought about, even if I didn't have all of the details, I was still able to just do it. So for those that are stuck in what I call the eye of the brainstorm, this video is for you. I'm going to be giving you the tips, the tricks, and the things that I do to just write. But just know that if you're here and you're watching this video and you want to get out of the eye of the brainstorm and you're coming to me, I'm not teaching you how to do it pretty, because I don't do it pretty. I am extremely disorganized when it comes to this stuff. There's papers that are everywhere. There's notebooks that have notes in them, and then some that are completely blank. There's ideas thrown absolutely everywhere. There's things that have no correlation to the actual story, but they're in there in those notebooks, and it's just like, they're just there. There's ideas that I don't even use, ideas that I want to use, but have no idea how they're going to go in there. But all of the things that I do help me get the thoughts out of my head and onto paper so that I can just write. So if you're here to learn how to write ugly, I'm Mellow Otter, aka Cat Savvy, and welcome to my video. I'm going to show you how to write ugly. Before we get into writing ugly, I gotta call out your mindset. I'm not coming at you, just the brain in your head case that's trying to prevent you from achieving greatness, because my brain does the same thing. And if my brain stops me from achieving greatness sometimes, I know there's people that are out there paralyzed by their own minds because of the thoughts that their brains are creating for them. So it's my job, if I'm here to try to teach you how to write ugly and get out of that perfectionism, to call out your brain the same way that I call out my own. If it don't apply to you, let it fly. That's okay. I am putting everything that I do for myself in this video for anyone at any stage of their writing, whether they already have something concrete and they're just figuring out where to take it, or they don't have anything on paper at all and they're just trying to get out of their heads and start writing. This video is supposed to be for anyone at any stage. So don't think of these as like a concrete way of thinking. Instead, just cherry pick the ideas that you like, take them and run with them. But I'm not coming at you. I'm coming at our heads that are trying to stop us and be our worst critics, because when it comes to being a writer, we are some of the hardest critics of ourselves when it comes to our creativity for absolutely no reason, because the things that pop up in our brains are absolute gold that we're sitting on, okay? So, are you really ready to write ugly? Are you really tired of being stuck in the brainstorm? Have you finally had enough and you actually just want to get everything out of your head and put it on paper and you don't care how it looks? Are you really ready to take that leap, no matter how unpolished, disorganized, nonsensical it may be when you put it on paper? Are you actually ready to go mad and just let your thoughts come out of your brain and spill through your fingertips? If you're not actually serious, put this video on your watch later and come back to it when you are, because I need the ones who are really fed up of their own heads. If you're worried that people won't like your story, that people will hate on your story, that people won't support you, that not everyone will love your story and will support you and buy it and like you as an author and as a writer, and people will talk about your story in a bad way and leave negative reviews and da-da-da-da-da, you're right. But now that you know that, do it anyway, because your story isn't for those people. Your story is for the people that do want to support you, that do want to see you succeed, that do love the ideas and the topics and the genres that you're writing about. You're writing your story for them and for you, not for all of the other people that are going to hate on it. So now that you know that there will be people in the world that aren't going to like what you do it anyway. The one stopping your story from being great is you. I know, I'm sorry. I'm gonna catch a lot of hate for this, but somebody had to lay it out flat. The one stopping the amazing story from coming out of your brain is you. Not time, not family, not kids, not a job, not school, not the internet. The only thing stopping the story from coming out of your brain and coming onto paper or onto digital world and being released is you. You watching this video right now proves that you want to bring this story to life, or these stories to life. If you have multiple, you want to get out of the way of yourself. So the first step is to acknowledge that yes, you are and you were in the way of it, and it's time to stop. The next thing I want to challenge about your mindset is time. Our timelines for creativity are different. Even though I'm giving you the tools that I use, they might not apply to you the same way that they apply to me. I mean, look at how many authors spent their entire livelihoods creating one book, and that one book is their absolute masterpiece because they poured their soul into it, compared to other authors who just put things out constantly. Even though they love the thing that they're creating, they're constantly putting so many things out, even if it may not necessarily be groundbreaking, right? So if I'm giving you these tools, know that if it takes you months where it takes me days, that's great. That's okay. If it takes you days where it takes me months, that's great. That's okay. Why? Because you're still creating. You're still doing the thing. And as long as something is being created, it doesn't matter how long or how short it takes you. Our timelines are different, but at the end of the day, you're still creating. And that is at the core of what matters. That is at the core of what makes creativity so amazing to have in the first place. The fact that you can make something matters more than how long or how short it takes you. The next thing that I want to challenge about your mind is to not compare your background footage to somebody else's highlight reel. Right now, you are in the background footage phase. You are in the behind the scenes. Once you get big and you're telling people about your story and where you began, and you have those small snippets of a moments where you're sitting there and sprawled around with paper and pens and just there's crumpled up paper and trash cans everywhere, you are in that stage. So I don't want you looking at authors who are having interviews about their best-selling book and having meet and greets and book deals and brand deals and getting together book merch and their social medias are blowing up. That isn't where you are. Some people see authors at those parts of their journeys and don't realize that it took years to get to where they are at that very moment. It took their entire lives to cultivate the skills, the knowledge, the discipline, the work ethic to get to that point, and they're reaping the rewards for all of the years of hard work that they dedicated to getting there. When you are writing ugly, it's easy to get caught in that mindset of just like, why can't I write like this person, and why can't I be at that point, without realizing that they were once where you are right now, trying to figure out where to start. That future is possible for you, but you have to start at this point. And going off of that, I want you to know that you can do this. It is possible. There are people watching this right now that think that a career in writing isn't possible for them. And why wouldn't it be? Anything that a human has ever done anywhere can be done. You can do this. You can make a career out of writing. You can get monetized off of writing. You can sell books. You can blow up on social media because of your book. The internet has changed the way that sharing things, promoting things, marketing things, and selling things works forever. It is more possible now than ever to make a career out of writing, and you can be in that spot. I think it's important when being real about these sort of things to also be honest and to uplift. Like, yes, you can make books. You will get fans. People will care about your book. People will want to see sequels and see where you take things next and care about your characters, sometimes more than they care about themselves. You would be surprised. People will read them. You can read these books. You can make these books. You can sell these books, and you can turn it into a career if that's what you want. But you gotta want it, and you gotta want it bad enough to be dedicated to making it happen. And lastly, the thing that I want to challenge about your mindset pertains to the actual writing itself. We've gotten out of the thought process and the brain trying to stop you and the doubts and all of those other hesitations and things like that. Now we're getting to the actual nitty-gritty of writing and how you can write ugly. The first thing is to act like your story only has 365 days to live. This is what I do. If you only have 365 days to bring your story to life, what would you do? How would you bring this story together? How would you get it on a paper and get it out if it only has 365 days? You can't think too hard about it if there's an urgency to it like that. If you only have 1 year, you can't worry about it being perfect. You can't worry about it being solidified, because you have to get this story out. And don't get me wrong, those 365 days does not have to be the whole story from beginning to end. It can if you want to challenge yourself that hard, and I applaud that. I am clapping and I am cheering and rooting for you if you decide to do that. Please let me know in the comments how that works for you a year from now. But it could also be just the prologue. It could also be getting from this chapter to this chapter. It could also be writing this many words. Like, you only have 365 days to write 10,000 words. You only have 365 days to write 25 chapters. You can sort of mold that idea however you want to, as long as you're putting the urgency there and you're sticking to it and disciplining yourself with some sort of repercussion or reward for achieving it. But you have to be able to discipline yourself to say, if I do this, if I reach 365 days and I don't complete this, what happens? If I reach 365 days and I do complete this, what happens? If I complete this before 365 days, what happens? But it's that urgency of you only have 1 year to do this thing that starts to change the perfectionism and the habit forming of like getting stuck in that eye of the brainstorm. Jumping off of that, actually, just make it exist first. All of that proper planning means nothing to a blank page, and I'm sorry that I had to be the one to tell you that, but it's the truth. All of that proper planning, those character developments, that setting that you're trying to perfectly emulate, that history, that government that you're trying to work out and how that pertains to your world, and that dope action scene that you're thinking about and how it's going to be a 3-stage fighting scene and the character's life is going to change throughout it, means nothing if you're staring at a blank page. Creativity is like clay. When it's wet, you can mold and shape and build it and even destroy it or just play with it if you wanted to. It's only once it starts to get hard that the work that you've been doing becomes final. But even still, a dry, lumpy piece of finished clay, a finished pot, a finished bowl is better than an unused lump of clay sitting and drying in the cabinet. And in that same form, if you're creating a story and you're building upon it and you're working on it and it's coming out and you're writing it, and then you decide that some things need to change or that things need to be tweaked or this whole part needs to come out, at least it's in front of you, it's done, and you're working on it as it's finished. So it's time to pick up your clay, wet it, and shape it. Get it out of the cabinet, because done is better than perfect all the time. That's the last thing that I want to talk about too, is understanding that your story will change and that it's supposed to. One of the things that I see people struggle with when they ask me writing tips is they think that every single idea that they have when it comes to their story is supposed to stay there. It's never supposed to move. They're supposed to make the story function around every single thought and idea that they have come to fruition. even if they've been writing for a year and the story doesn't seem to be going that way anymore, they still have to somehow make the things that they thought about a year ago work for this new story. That's not how the creative process works, in my opinion. Sometimes something that sounds like a really good idea might end up not even fitting in your story. Sometimes you might have to write entire chapters over or entire sections over because this one scene doesn't seem to quite fit into this moment anymore. So you might cut it out and put it into a different section. Sometimes you might have to completely change a character's name or stats or personality because the way that you're writing about them doesn't seem to quite fit to the ideas that you had before. Do you know how many times I had to go through my story and change a character's name because their name no longer really fits the identity of their character? Like, names matter to me when it comes to me making my character. So like, their names are supposed to be meaningful and they're supposed to mean something, right? So I'm making the story and they feel a certain way, it feels good. And then as the story is shifting and the next chapter comes out and the next chapter comes out, their name doesn't really quite fit them anymore. So I go back and I change their name, and then it leads to me changing certain things about their personality. Like, that is normal. That shifting, that changing, that molding, that adapting, that plucking things out and adding new things in, that switching things around, and oh, maybe this isn't working out, and you know, let me actually take this part and tweak it, and you know what, I actually don't even like this section anymore, let me remove it. That's a part of the creative process. Not every single thought that comes into your brain about your story is supposed to make it into your story. Then it ends up making it nonsensical and things just like, there's things everywhere. No, change is a part of the creative process. Your story is going to change. It's supposed to. Stopping yourself from change is halting your creative process. Sometimes creation needs destruction. How do I describe this? Collapse breeds collision. Collision breeds construction. And construction breeds creation. But you wouldn't have any of that if you didn't have destruction. A complete change of the plot could be the difference between this brainstorm that you're working on getting out of your head and your next bestseller. So if your spirit is saying, I don't really like this, or can we tweak this, or ooh, I have another idea, do it, run with it, go with that flow, because that flow could be the difference between you getting this story out and it being a crumpled up ball of paper in a trash can. If you're worried about the story that you're making becoming completely different from what you already have going on, or changing up too much and ending up not liking it later, then create separate documents. You know, put the current story that you have into one document and then have this new experimental document with all of these changes and ideas that you're creating. That way you're like saving your work as you're going, but run with the change, don't stop it. So with all of that out the way, you are finally ready to write ugly. Let's get into it. These are not going to be in any sort of order. I'm just going to be throwing them at you as I have them. So, okay. Hope y'all don't mind the teleporting a little bit. I just had to get into position. All right. So think of your character, your lore, the complications, the plot twist, the setting, all of that planning and stuff that you've been doing. Get it all in your head. Cool. Great. Now tell me your story in 10 words or less. If you can't do that, then your story is a bit too complicated to write ugly with. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. I had to say the same thing to myself. If you cannot condense your story into 10 words or less, you are too prepared and you are not ready to write ugly. I need you to bring it down, to simplify it, get it to 10 words so that we can have actionable words to write ugly with. Come back when you got that ready. Write it down now. On a napkin, on a notebook, on a sticky note, shit, on your hand. Write the words when you think of them. Even if it's just one word, like hit the SpongeBob and just put the before you go have break time if you need to. Get the words out. I'm not joking. Blocking your brain from pouring the words out, even if they don't make sense, is blocking your creative flow. So when you think of it, get it out. however you can. Write backwards. Who said that you had to start writing from the beginning? Why can't you write from that cliffhanger, that plot twist, that really romantic scene between the will they won't they characters, that one enemy boss that you just can't get out of your head with this antagonist that you don't even have fully fleshed out yet? Why can't you start from the fun parts? My book started from a prophecy, a quote. That was all I had to go off of, and the story formed around that prophecy that said, when the second moon bleeds, the blue blood of the Forsaken shall eclipse the false light. I randomly thought of it. Isn't it fire though? But I randomly thought of it, and I had nothing else to go off of. Why wouldn't I just start from there? Instead of having to build this sort of foundation that justifies the quote, just build around the fun parts. The only person stopping you from doing that is you. Have fun. Start from the parts that make you passionate about the story in the first place. There's nothing wrong with starting a story from an action sequence, or starting a story from a romantic sequence, or starting the story from a moment of suspense or thrill. Those are the hooks that reel people in. So don't limit yourself and force yourself to start from the boring and then somehow make your way to the fun. Just have fun. Take some time to write down the thoughts that are associated with your story. Take like 30 seconds, 60 seconds if you're a slow starter, and just start a timer, grab a notebook, and write down every single thought that you associate with your story. Things like summer, space, evil, murder, fantasy, dog, fighting, trauma, city, future, water, time paradox, evil character, good versus evil, enemies to lovers, like even things like romance, female main character, 3-book series, gay, like whatever you want to associate with your story, or whatever you think of when you think of your story, keep going with that until the timer runs out. When you're done, sit back, read the things that you associate your book with out loud. Yes, it has to be out loud so that you can hear what you're associating your story with. And then have that on the side. This helps you when you're actually building your world and when you're building your story to acknowledge the things that your brain already associates your story with, and then to cherry pick whether those things will actually come to fruition within your story. This next one is called snapshotting. Snapshotting to me is taking scenes from your mind and seeing if they fit the overall view of your book. It helps you kind of paint a picture of how your character fits into the world and what the world might even be in the first place, because it might be different from what you're thinking it might be, right? So to do this, you write about 1 to 10 paragraphs. It can be less or it can be more. It depends on your sort of execution with this process. So it's however many or little you want. And you snapshot a moment in your character's life, right? Don't think about the plot. Don't think about the things that you want to happen. Just think about your character, the type of character that they are, the type of person they are, the type of world that they're in, the type of trauma that they might be associated with, if they're a criminal, or if they're in some sort of debt, or if they're a lovebird and they're going through like serial dating schemes, that sort of thing. Think of your character, right? And just write about that scene. Right? This could be your character walking down the city streets, maybe going on a date, getting into a fight, running from the cops, finding a body in a house if it's a sort of like mystery thriller sort of thing. It has nothing to do with your book. It's isolated as like a side thing, right? But think of a scene that your character might be a part of. Them waking up from a drunk night and they're somehow in a dumpster with an old lady that's eating ramen. Sorry, my family is making a lot of noise downstairs. But this is the best part of writing ugly. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to pertain to the book. The whole purpose of this is to get your creative juices flowing and to get yourself into the mind of your character, your setting, and your world. If it's gritty, then you write a snapshot of it being gritty. If it's romantic, then you write a snapshot of it being romantic. If it's science fiction-y, then you can start thinking of how that science pertains to your world, how bacteria functions and how that affects your characters. If it's futuristic, if it's in the past, what that sort of would look like to you. This is how you get those creative juices flowing without having to immediately associate it with your book. You make it isolated from it. So this is the even craziest part, right? Because there's no rhyme, because there's no reason to these like nonsensical moments, right? You never know what could actually be formed from doing these sort of exercises. So like you could create a snapshot and then you're like, wait a minute, this scene would actually go really well in the book. And then you form a whole chapter around that one paragraph sequence, right? Or it could be like, I thought that I wanted to write a mystery thriller, but it seems like I'm writing a sci-fi action instead. Or it's like, I thought I wanted to make a romantic sequence between these two characters, but they seem like they would be better as best friends instead. And then or maybe they're ex-lovers that turned into best friends. Like, these sort of snapshotting moments can end up changing your entire thought process about your book if you allow yourself to be creative and experimental with it. So have fun with it. That's really it. Have fun with it. Screenshot a moment of your characters' lives, of your sub-character, of your main character, whoever you want to do. Even the enemy, even the antagonist, even the opposition if you want to. Screenshot a moment of their life, right? And then let yourself run with it for a paragraph to 10 paragraphs. Build your characters first and foremost. At the end of the day, the world building is important, don't get me wrong, but the people that might be reading this work are reading it for the people that you have in it. So to me, that's the most important thing to develop before everything else. Mixie Moxie, remember I was telling you, started from a fictional location in New Jersey, and I didn't even have a layout of the city until the sequel, pretty much. And even still with the sequel, it's not even fully fleshed out. Like, I made the locations up. It took place in like 6 locations that happened pretty much in a circle, and I can't even describe them that well to this day. But the characters I know from the back of my hand, and that's what the comments talk about. They talk about the characters, how they made them feel, how they relate to their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, what the characters did and how it affects them. They don't even care about the fictional locations. So when you really develop your characters and you really have solid foundations for what your characters are, what they're like, what their personalities are, how people can relate to these characters, I promise you the setting starts to matter less and less because the characters carry your story. There's a quote here that I put in my script that I really want to get out to you guys. It says, if you build good enough characters, how solidly you've built the world becomes an appreciation but an afterthought to the masterpiece that is the human or inhuman nature that you've crafted. And I legit couldn't have said it better myself than myself. It's honestly the truth. How solidly you build your characters, and how amazingly how much you can tell that love was put into your characters would make everything else a second thought. Like, your world is formed around the characters that you create. So how do you build characters ugly to get you started and yet still make them in-depth enough to give you such a beautifully in-depth experience with characters? I've developed a method that helps me, and I've coined it as the nap time method, and I'm really proud of the name. Nap time stands for name, age, alignment, personships, trauma, internals, mindset, and externals. The trick is, when you're filling this stuff up for your characters, that you want to keep it to no more than a sentence. You can use commas, but you want to keep it to no more than a sentence for these characters. So, it's nap time. Pick a character. This can be either a mock-up character for this exercise, or it can be one of the characters from the story. And we're going to fill this out. If you don't have an answer for any one of these categories, it lets you know what you need to think about for your character development. All right. So first is name, is the name of your character. It can just be the first name, last name, middle name if you have all of that, but the name of your character. Second is age. It's the age of your character. Even if it's like immortal ages and they're like 400, put that down too. Alignment, I got this from Dungeons and Dragons. It really does work wonders for character building. So what of the alignment is your character most like? Are they like a lawful good? Are they a chaotic evil? Are they a true neutral? If you want a breakdown of what alignments are and how that pertains to building a character and you would like a video breaking down the alignment chart, just comment alignment, please. And if enough people ask, I'll make a separate video about this. Personships. This is for the prominent relationships that your character has, right? So do they have parents? Do they have siblings, childhood friends, partners, or ex-partners? Are they all alone? Are they isolated? Are they an orphan? Write that all down in that section in one sentence. Trauma. This is the thing that your character is battling the hardest. What will be the number one obstacle of trauma that they're dealing with? If they don't have any trauma, congratulations, but it might make for a boring story. I'm just saying, like, trauma is what fuels these stories. So what is the trauma that your character is dealing with? Internals. This is for inside the body. It could be emotions. It could be actual things afflicting inside of your character's body, right? It doesn't always have to be trauma related. It could just be what's going on in there, right? So are they immortal? Are they immune if you're doing like a zombie sort of thing or a sci-fi sort of thing? Can they shapeshift? Do they have superhuman strength? Are they fighting some sort of disease that's riddling them from the inside? Anything having to do with their internals, write that down there. Mindset. This is for how the character thinks about the world. And I got this section from 16 Personalities. This is a website where you can determine what your personality is by doing a quiz. And I fell in love with that format. I am a INTJ, for example. So if you don't know about 16 Personalities and you like a video about that, just put 16 Personalities, please, in the comments, and I'll make another video describing how that can pertain to characters and world building. But all you gotta do is put the personality of your character and how that mindset affects their thinking. And then lastly is externals, right? This is the facet of what's going on externally within their body. So do they have any scars? Do they have any tattoos? Are they fragile? Do they look fragile? Are they tall? Are they like, what are the external characteristics of your character? And it could even be how their emotions present externally. So like, are they hot-headed? Are they anxious? Do they tend to cry a lot when they experience intense emotion? Anything external that could afflict them, even if it's like a curse. Like if you're getting into the fantasy sort of things, do they have a curse mark? Does that curse like glow, or does it have some sort of outside look? Do they have some sort of like spirit or some sort of like companion that's walking alongside them externally? All of that other stuff is a part of their character development. So you want to put that there. All of these things pertain to your character, their world building, and their lore. So congratulations, you just had nap time. Now your characters are ready and they're set with the foundation of their life within your world, and you're set to build upon it later. But that's how you make your characters ugly. Make them real short, sweet, to the point, and you have the foundation that you need to build upon. The next tip I have is to why yourself to death. And the one thing that I can say about writing ugly is that why is so important to this process. Even if the why behind something is no reason, that's still a reason, right? But the more you ask why throughout this process, the more you're forced to answer your own questions or just toss the parts out that don't make sense. You might be able to save them for another story, right? And just put them into the idea book for later. But like, the more that you question yourself, the more you have to answer yourself. And the more you answer yourself, the more answers you have for your story. And the more answers you have for your story, the more details you're crafting for yourself. But it comes from that ugliness of questioning every single decision that you're making without criticizing it, right? So what I want you to do is pretend that you're not the author. Pretend that you are reading your story to a 5-year-old, and everything that you're reading to the 5-year-old is being responded with why. You've done all this brainstorming, you've done all this thinking, all this crafting, all this character building, but why? Why does it matter? Why should we care? And I'm not coming at you when I say this, but I say, why would we read it? Yes, It's your story. It's a beautiful story. You're the one that's worthy to tell it. But why are you the one that's worthy to tell it? Why should it be you over anybody else? Why are you telling something in a special way that makes it different from the next person, right? Why does it mean so much to you that you have to write about it? You know, what is the story that you're telling that makes it so special? Why does that affect the characters that are within the story? Why would people who are reading it outside of the story relate to it and care about it? All of these things you have to answer, and if you don't have an answer, then it tells you a lot about the incompleteness of the story, right? And it's not a bad thing. To be able to question yourself is a wonderful thing, because we're humans and we have free will to do so, right? And you don't have to get defensive about it, because once you get into the creative process of why is this thing happening? Why does, in the case of my story, right? Why does magic not have any rules? Why do deities determine the worldview? Why do people care about the deities and about my magic tree? Because I have a magic tree. So why do people care about the magic tree? Why does this not take place on Earth? Why does magic shift the way the seasons work? And like, why do people feel this sort of way about this certain species, and why does that affect the species in the way that it does? All of these things I have to ask myself. And even when it comes down to like, you have to hold yourself accountable too when it comes to like, why are you the one that's worthy to tell the story? Because you have to sit back and be like, why am I the one that's worthy to tell the story? What about the way that I tell it makes it so special? Right? What and about the way that I'm telling Freyla Tree of Chisi makes me the one worthy to tell the story? And I had to sit back and be like, because I describe it in a way that you feel. Because when I'm writing it, you're not just reading it. You're a part of it. You're immersed in it. You're understanding it. I'm describing it to you. It's something that you can read and see at the same time. You can read and feel at the same time. And only I am able to describe it in a way that can do that, in a way that's worthy of my story to be absorbed, you know? And it's okay to think that. It's okay to think only I can tell my story in this way. Because that's what makes you the author. That's what makes you special. That's what makes you the one that's worthy of writing it. So be confident in that, but be able to answer that question for yourself, so that when other people are like, what did you write this for? Oh, that's a great question. I wrote this for, you know? So why yourself to death? Ask why you write. Have a separate document or notebook that's purely for annotations of your story, right? And question yourself to death on your story as you write it until you have no more answers for the things that you're writing. Pretend that you're that 5-year-old, right? Or for some of you, you might be parents and there might actually be a 5-year-old. So show your story to your 5-year-old, you know, and answer those whys. And every time you jot down an important story beat, not only do you have to simplify this story beat to this child so that it keeps you from being a little bit too advanced when you're thinking, right? But you have to explain yourself. Why is this moment important? Why does it mean anything to the splot? Why does it mean anything to the plot, the story, the characters, the moral message, the world? Why would people react to it? You know, why does this affect the story? Why does this affect the people in the world, right? Why is the world the way that it is? Why is that normal or abnormal, right? This helps you world build. It helps you simplify. It helps you answer questions so that you can develop the story, even if all of the things that you are answering might not actually make it into the story. Do you think that writers and authors put every single thing they think about their world into the book? No, that's what the Patreon's for. And that's what the behind the scenes and like, did you know, and fun facts and all of that other stuff is about later, because you have people that care about your world so much that they want to know all of the other stuff that's not even in the book. But as an author, you're playing God in your story, right? So when you have all of those answers, even if they don't all go into your book, the more you ask yourself why throughout your brainstorming process, the more you can answer yourself and the more you can build your world and your story around those answers. The last tip that I have for you to help you write ugly is to have 3 notebooks. I learned this a long time ago in college that you should have 3 notebooks, and it's for the 3 different facets of your thought process. And there's 3 different means of note taking, right? So you want to have 3 notebooks. I have these. These are from characters in my book, by the way, and they are available for sale. So if you want one and you need your 3 notebooks, feel free to get them from me. But you want to have 3 notebooks. And the first is the disheveled notebook, right? This is the one that's out of order, has notes written backwards, it has random thoughts. It's like some pretty good ideas mixed in here and there, things that you definitely want, horrors beyond godly imagination, right? Scribbles, doodles, sometimes mental breakdowns can be in there. Like, this disheveled notebook is the chaos of your mind. It is the ugly, right? There is no rhyme or reason to this notebook because there's not supposed to be. This notebook, the purpose of it is to get the thoughts out of your mind and onto something without the worry of where it's going to go, how it's going to go, why it should go there. Like, there is no polishing to it. This lets you free your mind and empty your brain onto the paper, right? Not only is this the purpose of the disheveled notebook, but it's also to make the thoughts real, because once you write down something, it becomes real. Once it's onto the paper and you're seeing it and you're looking at it, it becomes real and it's no longer just floating around in your head, right? So the disheveled notebook is for the chaos. The next notebook is what I call the holding it together notebook. It's not quite coherent, but it's not quite falling apart. This is where you cherry pick the ideas from the chaotic notebook, from the disheveled notebook, right? And you line them up side by side. It still doesn't have to be perfectly organized, but it's not quite organized, it's not quite disorganized, okay? Maybe a little bit here and there. It's still generally kind of all over the place, but it's formulated a lot better than the sloppiness that is the disheveled, right? This is the idea book. The purpose is to have a place to constantly refer to for the different ideas that you have, right? A section for names of characters, a section for names of villages or towns or locations, like different scenery ideas, different city names, different that sort of thing. A place where you can just have a collection of all of your ideas to pluck and pick from and choose what you want for the story. And when you're thinking about your book, like names, places, personality traits, plot threads, conflicts, traumas, backstories, opponents, it's all here for you to spin your story into form while still not being concrete and feeling fixed, like you have to go along with it. So this is your idea book. And then, of course, your last notebook is your polished and your pretty. This is where your perfectionism can come into full swing. Like, only the best ideas will go into this notebook. The ones that made it through all 3 trials of thought. No matter what notebook you're writing in, your brain is like, I want this to go here, right? The ones that are constantly circling back into your head and going, this is good, this is something that I want to happen in this book, right? But the kicker with this notebook is that it has to be organized. So you go from chaos, you go from disheveled to kind of being aligned but kind of not. And now you have to be organized. It has to be in chronological order. It has to have a timeline. The character personalities have to be concrete. So whatever you're putting in this notebook is going in your book, right? The main characters, the sub characters, the enemies, the settings. It's no longer moldable. This is sort of remember what I was talking about before with the clay starting to harden. This notebook is for the hardening. So only the best things that you're putting in your book actually are going in this notebook. There's no more time for chaos. There's no more time for calamity. Everything is real. It's on paper and it's going from your idea into a reality, right? So only put the things in this notebook that you know will change your story. And these are the main plot points. So you have your disheveled notebook for absolutely any and everything. You have your idea notebook that's acting between the bridge between your chaos and your creativity. And then you have your polish, you have your perfection, and you have your story being molded into form, right? These are the 3 notebooks that help you write ugly. A bonus tip that I have for you that I actually just thought about, it's not a part of the script, so if I get a little bit ranty, it is what it is. But a bonus tip that I have for you is to have a plot point document. This one is best put digitally instead of it being written, but you could write it down if you really want to. But this is a list of all of your plot points that you really want to happen in your book, right? So you know you want to have this specific climax. You know you want to have this sort of ending. You know that things kind of really start around here, but you're not really sure how or where, right? And you want a list of all of the plot points that you can have for your story with some space in between to change things up here and there. This doesn't have to be concrete, but it's so that you know where things are going in your story and how they're getting there. So you could be like, okay, last time I left off, we were walking through a forest trying to figure out how we're going to fight this boss, right? And again, like I'm just giving ideas, but you're walking through a forest trying to figure out how we can fight this boss, but you are 10 steps away from this climactic action scene. So how are you going to go from this moment that you're in right here to this climactic action scene? A plot point list helps you get there while still not being concrete enough and still being ugly enough to let it be fixed and molded or crossed out, because there have been so many times where I had plot points that I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore, and then I crossed that out. But a plot point list helps me see where my story is going, where it's been, and where it's trying to get to. And with that, I have officially taught you everything that I know currently about how I write ugly. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helps someone out there, even if it's just one person. I've done my job. This was one of the most disheveled videos that I have ever put together. I wish I could show y'all the behind the scenes. So it's very fitting for writing ugly because, oh my gosh, this was put together horribly. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you took something from this video. If you would like any other tips and tricks, or if you would like videos that are explaining the concepts that I talked about earlier, just let me know in the comments. I'm really appreciative that you guys wanted to have these tips and tricks and receive these sort of things to be able to write better. I'm honored that people even want to know how I do the things that I do behind my creative process. So I hope that it helps you write, and I hope that it helps you bring to life your ideas and your stories. Please tell me your stories in the comments below, and if this video helped you. I want to take this time to thank my patrons and really just share my appreciation for you guys for caring for my creativity as a whole. Thank you guys for caring about my story, my characters, my lore. Thank you guys for supporting my merch that's coming out, and me reading on Patreon, and my audiobooks, and my artistic tips and tricks, and the characters that I draw, literally every single part of my creative process, and just being better as a multi-passionate person. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this journey and just helping me turn this from something that I was doing in the corner of my room to being something that I can really turn into a sustainable career. Like, you guys are changing my life, and I can't put into words how much this means to me. So thank you to all of my patrons for your monthly support. If you would like to learn more about my story, learn more about the things that I do over on Patreon, read audiobooks or hear audiobooks that I read to you, anything. If you would like to be a part of my creative journey, feel free to join my Patreon. You can join for free, but there are monetary tiers as well. If you are over invested in fictional people, like majority of my patrons are, there is a $5 tier where you get monthly lore drops about my book, as well as an exclusive access to my Patreon story that is written only on Patreon, as well as so many other perks. Like, we have fun over there. So the link is in my description, as well as my bio, if you would like to join my Patreon. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Thank you guys so much for being a part of my creative journey here. And until then, peace.